happy for you to. You can.
You go first.
You, go on, you.
Buenos dias a todos. Good morning, everyone. I'm Gregor Robertson, the Mayor of Vancouver, Canada, joined by Clover, the Mayor of Sydney, Australia, just to say some words about the challenges that our two cities face in grappling with climate change, in greening our cities, and in particular the partnerships that we are trying to make with other levels of government. In particular, we both had challenges with our federal governments, national governments, that have in recent years been very difficult to work with as cities on the forefront of the climate challenge, working to be leaders, going to renewable energy, working to be leaders in cleaning up our cities. We have had challenging agendas to align with national governments in Canada and Australia that have very different perspectives on climate change. And I would say from a Canadian perspective, most of my years as mayor were dealing with a conservative government in Canada that was very focused on fossil fuel development and was certainly not focused on supporting the cities of Canada to go green and to be more and more sustainable, and our shift to renewable energy and energy efficiency. That has changed quite significantly in Canada with the election of Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister and the Liberal Party, who have become good partners with the cities of Canada, working on public transit investments, working to enable more affordable housing to be built, particularly in their signal in Paris a year ago to set aggressive goals for Canada and to ensure that we're focused on a 1.5C goal as a planet. So we've been encouraged to see a federal government in Canada take over and set a much more bold direction on climate. That said, we haven't resolved all of the issues with this. There's still extensive fossil fuel development in Canada and a recent pipeline approval that affects Vancouver by our national government, which we have been opposed to for many years. So we still have our challenges in specific cases, but we're in a different paradigm working with the national government that now recognizes climate change and the importance of Canada being a leader on climate and is now focused on a national price on carbon, which we've had in BC and my province and had been very successful with, but we're looking forward to a national scheme that ensures that carbon is priced appropriately, that helps us as a city to achieve our goals to be greener and cleaner. So I'll leave it there and hand over to Clover, and then I think we'll take questions.
Thank you, Gregor. I'm very pleased to be here with Gregor Robertson. I'd like the Mayor of Vancouver, and I'd like to congratulate him on all that he's achieved for Vancouver. I'd also like to say, as Mayor of Sydney, how pleased I am to be at this C40. I come to the C40 to be inspired with what mayors around the world are doing to address climate change, and I also come with the learnings that we have to share, which I think are really important because, as Gregor said, we operate in Sydney in an environment where we don't have a federal government for quite some years now being supportive of the work we're doing. And yet the work we're doing is so important because, you know, emissions are occurring in our cities. 70 to 80% of emissions are in our cities. We know national governments have signed up to the Paris Agreement. We know that our national governments need cities to be able to achieve what they have committed to. That is ensuring that we don't go to 3 or 4 points. We stay at 1.5 and thereby avoid accelerating climate change. We know from this conference that we have to do twice as much as we have been doing. I'm proud to say that the City of Sydney has had a long-term commitment since 2008 to reducing our emissions by 70% by 2030. I'm very proud to say that we can report that notwithstanding unprecedented economic activity in the City of Sydney of 37% in recent years, we have reduced our emissions in our own operations by 29%, we've reduced emissions across the city by 19%, and we are working very effectively with the business community. The business community in the City of Sydney gets it. We have a Better Buildings partnership. It is made up of the owners of over 50% of the commercial buildings in the CBD of Sydney, which is a global city of Australia. They signed up in 2011 when I invited them to commit to our 2030 target, and they are now reporting that they've reduced their emissions by 47% and they're saving $30 million on their operations annually. And what is fantastic about is they're the leaders in the business community, and they have never worked together before, but they're working very effectively as our Better Buildings partnership. So I think we have learnings to share, and I think we have much to learn, and this conference is really very encouraging because there is no more important issue than ensuring the survival of the planet, and cities have a real role to play here. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Greg. Good morning. I'm Gregory Scruggs with Cityscope. We're a media outlet based in the U.S. focused on trends in cities. What advice would you have for U.S. mayors who are about to enter a likely scenario of severe climate change skepticism at the federal level, which could roll back a number of recent initiatives and might even threaten funding for those cities if they continue to pursue their climate-friendly course?
Look, I think the important message of C40 is that cities working effectively together around the world are what will make the difference. And, you know, we've been very effective in the City of Sydney, and yet we have not had a supportive federal government up until now, although our federal government has signed up to the Paris Agreement. But, you know, I said yesterday that we've, in fact, for a period of time in Australia, have had a Trump-style leader. And whilst it would be even more effective, as Mayor Robertson has said, working with the new Trudeau government, you can achieve even more. Of course you can. But there is so much you can achieve even if you do have a government that is not supportive. And I think there are three things that cities need to do. They need to set their long-term plan with targets and achievable goals and achieve those goals. They need to have strong partnerships. In our case in Sydney, it's been with business as well as with the residential community. And they need to work with others on advocacy of where change is needed. And I think they're the three things that cities in the US will be able to do, notwithstanding the change in leadership and the change in perhaps approach to climate change. And I just say to climate deniers, by denying climate is not going to stop climate change accelerating. And I think those that understand the science and those that understand their responsibility and commitment to the future will take the action that cities can take. And, you know, as Mark Watts said this morning, all of our cities are doing at least one of the things we need to do, and we can learn from others. And we don't have time in our cities to reinvent the wheel. We have to really take something that's really worked in a city and implement it in our own city. And we have a good example of that. In 2007, Los Angeles reported to C40 that they were trialling, the first US city to do so, LED lighting. We took that back to Sydney. We trialled it. Now I can say that all our street lights and park lights are LED, following that Los Angeles example. That is reducing our emissions by 40% in terms of our lighting. It is saving us $800,000 a year. So, you know, there are other things that we'll learn from this C40, and I hope that some of the things we're doing we'll be able to share with other cities.
Well, I would just say, you know, yeah, Canadian cities endured many years under the Harper Conservative government, where we were ignored and where climate change was set aside for their fossil fuel agenda. And Canadian cities made very good progress on our climate goals and efforts to green our cities. So We've demonstrated that at a city level in Canada in recent years, and as Clover says, now with the Trudeau government, we feel much more bullish about our partnership and the ability to get even more done. But you only need to look at, and Clover mentioned Los Angeles, but look at what California has achieved through many different presidents with agendas that were not aligned with California's environmental goals. I mean, California's been a leader globally, despite U.S. national leadership that did not support their actions. So, I think cities and states and provinces can do a lot, and we're seeing unprecedented collaboration between cities in forums like C40, where we are pushing the pace, and we're working together with citizens and business to make sure that we make the change that's necessary.
Thank you. My name is Carla from Mexico City Voices, a radio station from Mayor Sydney. Which kind of networking do you have besides the private sector, but with NGOs or civil society, to improve this kind of strategies of alliances and networking?
We think alliances are incredibly important, and I'll take some examples. The majority of people living in the City of Sydney now are living in apartments, and we didn't have a national rating tool for apartments. So we've worked with various groups and cooperatives to lobby, and we are now getting that national change. So there is a growing trend in the metropolitan area of the City of Sydney, Sydney, for more and more people to be living in apartments. This is a new phenomenon. Most people in the past lived in suburbia, and so to be able to make those apartment buildings sustainable, we needed that national rating tool. We've now achieved that, and that was through alliances. Another example is Australia is one of the driest continents on earth, and yet the City of Sydney has carried out some really important recycling programs, both in terms of our parks, but also in terms of recycled water in our major urban renewal area, which is called Green Square. And the Water Authority was going to change the rules so to make it much more difficult for commercial recycling. It was really put under threat, which was, crazy given the nature of Australia. Again, we got together with universities, we got together with the private sector, and we lobbied hard, and so we have a real change there, so that is not now happening. So I think also we're now working, we work a lot with not only environment groups, but also with developers, because we all have the same interest. Developers understand that they need to make their buildings more sustainable, and in fact, one of our problems in Australia is that we're still all geared to fossil fuel energy and energy of another era rather than the 21st century. And so we're working again with the property developers and the environment groups to try and get a rule change to allow decentralised energy. And so you have partners right across the spectrum, and you have groups that haven't usually worked together, working together on this goal. Yep. Yes.
Hi, Graham Lloyd from The Australian. Clover, if I can ask, given the warm reception that the Australian government received in Marrakesh, particularly for their decision to ratify the Paris Agreement subsequent to Donald Trump's election, is it fair to come to an international gathering and fob them off as a pack of climate deniers?
I think probably I'd more describe your newspaper in that category. But what I'd say, I'm really pleased, and Australians are pleased that our government signed signed up to the Paris Agreement. But there are no commitments and no policy in place to achieve that agreement. That's why I'm saying they really need the work of the cities to be able to achieve that reduction in emissions that we've committed to. I think the work of the cities and the work we're doing here is really important for the Australian government. And I think, if they're really serious about meeting their obligation, which I hope they are, that they will have to start developing policies, and I think if they develop policies and working closely with cities, it'll be very effective. And I look forward to that.
You don't think there has been progress on the part of the Australian?
No, I think it's shameful, the lack of progress, and I think it's shameful, the lack of targets.
Thank Thank you very much, Mayor Vancouver. Is there any kind of action plan between the cities of the region of Mexico, US, and Canada to improve all these kind of things that you have told us for the goals?
Well, certainly there's a long-standing deep connection across North America between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and that extends between our cities. I think we have a long history of partnership in cities in North America of working together, and despite our national governments being on different pages at times, I'm obviously concerned about the change with the U.S.-Mexican relations with President Trump. Canada and Mexico have always had strong relations, and I believe that will strengthen and deepen in these years ahead, which is a good thing. And certainly Vancouver benefits immensely from our connection with Mexico. C40 is a great example of how our cities come together. So we tend to work more globally now because different problems in different cities benefit from these extensive connections. So the partnerships, I work obviously closely with cities like Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, which are very, very close geographically to Vancouver, with similar challenges. But beyond the North American connections, the global connections are really important. And Mayor Moore and Sydney have been a great example for Vancouver. We've benefited from their leadership on climate and environment for many years, and taking ideas from their work.
We share ideas.
We share or steal ideas very freely, and that's part of what makes us successful. And we work globally, but that said, I think the connection in North America is an important one, and one that we'll continue to value.
Otras preguntas?
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
There's another question.
Hi, my name is Diane. I work for Le Figaro in France. I don't mean to stress on the negative, but I do have a question, especially in the light of the recent US election. Do you have any concrete examples of measures or targets that you have really struggled to achieve or failed to achieve because of the lack of support from the federal government? Is there like a specific area that's particularly tough to, implement when you're working, alone as a city?
Look, I think when governments all just sign up to the same goals, it just makes it seamless, and I think that's what you're experiencing now, on a whole range of issues. But the issue for us, particularly at the moment in Australia, is about getting regulatory change so that we are not just committed to centralised fossil energy, but we can have decentralised energy, because we know from the experience, whether it's in New York or Copenhagen or Barcelona, that decentralised energy is one way of getting renewable energy and reducing emissions. And so, yes, that's an example for us, but we've had so many wins, though, in terms of working with our state government on water and on the rating tool for apartments, and recently on energy efficiency, and recently our state government committed to our same commitment of zero emissions by 2050. So it just makes it easier for working arrangements and getting outcomes. And really this work is about making commitments and getting outcomes. And I think, it's not only in Sydney, but so many of our cities who are here at this conference don't have federal governments that are sort of working with them, but they're still getting amazing outcomes. And that is what's very, very encouraging.
I would say there are still many national governments very focused on fossil fuel development and subsidizing fossil fuel energy at a time when we're seeing an enormous shift of private capital to renewable energy. That's now the majority of venture capital goes to renewable energy since 2012. So national governments are being left behind here. Cities are aggressively shifting to renewable energy, and that's a troubling trend. When national governments set targets and commit to Paris, they need to back that up by shifting their investments and commitments to renewable energy. And that utility piece is very important. Many cities do not have full control of utilities, and ensuring that we can aggressively shift off of fossil fuels and to achieve our targets, to clean our air, to improve our cities, and we need that partnership to deepen. We need the national governments to stop subsidizing fossil fuels and to be investing significantly in renewables and supporting cities being able to shift our utilities to renewables and a more distributed network.
Following up on that question, Mayor Robertson, during the Harper administration, when City of Vancouver and BC writ large were attempting to block construction of ports or facilities that would receive Alberta tar sands oil and other fossil fuels, were there any penalties that the city or the province suffered, or legal issues with the national government that was trying to push the extraction of those fossil fuels and ultimately send them out through your ports? I mean, how effective is that strategy of not letting the fossil fuels get to the terminus in Vancouver, which is something that, for example, Portland is trying to do and may have to hold the line on in the Trump administration?
Well, I would say that there are no direct penalties, and cities can continue doing our work and achieving our goals because we do have a fair bit of self-sufficiency and independence. That said, 90% of Canadian tax dollars go to federal and provincial levels. Half of our taxes go to the federal government. And we expect that money to come back to our cities, where almost all Canadians live. So it's the punishment from federal governments is a lack of investment. It is basically ignoring cities for many years and turning off the investment tap of the dollars that we've sent their way. We don't get them back. That makes it more challenging for us to achieve our goals when the tax dollars we remit to our federal government aren't returned as investment in our communities. So that's generally the penalty is a lack of investment in infrastructure that enables cities to advance our work. And yeah, I would say we still face a challenge with U.S. coal potentially being exported through Vancouver. The federal government recently approved a coal terminal on the Fraser River, which we have grave concerns about in Vancouver, and which U.S. cities blocked for recent years. So, with the new Trump government and a focus on coal energy exports, we could be in a much more intense fight to prevent that coal part from ever being activated.
Sorry, we just have one more question over here, but if you could put on your headphones, please.
Okay.
Which language?
Spanish.
Okay.
Two, is
Liliana Hernández, del periódico Excelsior en la Ciudad de México. Quisiera preguntarles cuáles son los programas que ustedes creen que ustedes han hecho en sus ciudades y que podrían aplicarse en la Ciudad de México y viceversa. ¿Cuáles son los programas de la Ciudad de México que podrían replicar en sus ciudades? Thank you.
Is that okay?
Well, I find that one a bit hard to answer because I'm not sure what programs that Mexico has, but I did give you examples of where we'd learned from Los Angeles on terms of LED lighting. We're just briefly summarising what Sydney's done. We've been carbon neutral in our own operations since 2007. We are putting solar panels on every building we own where it's possible. We've retrofitted our buildings for reduction of water and energy waste or usage. We've gone to LED in our parks and streets. We are rolling out a bike network, a separated bike network. We have introduced car share. We've reduced changed our fleet. There are a whole range of things. When we first did our work, we actually built a waterfall chart and it showed that we had to take so many different actions. It's not just one action, it's many, many, many actions. And that's why it's good having the policy, you know, and setting the target. If you've set the target, you know there are many things you have to do to reach it. One of the things we really did want to do to reach it was to have decentralised energy, but we're still working on that aspect.
I would say Mexico City is working hard to improve the transportation network, given the enormous challenges you face here with traffic congestion. And we've been impressed to see the progress on rapid transit, the investment in bus rapid transit and subway lines, and Vancouver and many cities are following that same lead and aggressively investing in rapid transit and improving bus networks so people don't have to drive. That's, I think, everywhere we're trying to limit the amount of cars because the traffic is already so bad and the air pollution is worsening. So we want to be sure we're enabling people to take transit and make it convenient and efficient. And I think Mexico City, despite the huge challenge and population, has made progress on rapid transit investment. I think been focused on that for many years, and I've certainly seen a big difference now with the air quality compared to many years ago when it was notoriously bad. It's still obviously a challenge given the scale of the city and the geography, but it's good to see that focus on clean transportation and helping people get around, and hopefully someday the air is really clean again and there's no traffic. It's hard to imagine still, but I know Mayor Mancera and his team are very focused on this, and that's something we share in Vancouver for sure.
I think it's something all our cities share.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
thank you. Thank you very
Thanks
much.
all. Thank you for being here.
The next press conference will be starting shortly. Anna, can you make an announcement just saying the next press conference will be starting shortly? In Spanish.
Shortly, what do you mean?